Hi, this is Tracy Lizotte, and today I'm going to share with you one of my advanced watercolor courses that I have in my art academy. I'm going to share with you how I paint this chipmunk on a sunflower. And like all my watercolor paintings, I always begin each painting by first mapping out all the lines and shapes in my composition first in pencil. I use comparative measuring to make sure everything is drawn up in proportion, and I show you how to do this in the course. It's really important that you map out all your lines and shapes ahead of time before adding color, because once you add the color, it's very difficult to change a shape. So you always want to make sure that shapes are right where you want them to be before adding any color. And when you're happy with your shapes, you can begin by adding the first layer of paint. Now, when I paint with watercolors, I like to paint from background to foreground and from lightest color to darkest color. This is one of my favorite techniques. I am creating a sky where it's darker at top and lighter at bottom. So I'm going to use a graded wash for that. And I need to use multiple graded washes in order to get the vibrancy that I want in the top of the sky. Now my goal here is to create a sky that is nice and smooth without any brush strokes. This is something that I really enjoy doing in my watercolors, picking up the paper, moving it around, getting the paint to dry just how I want it, using minimum efforts with a brush. And I show you how to do that in the course. Once the sky is done and it's dry, I can then go into the next layer. Again, we're working from background to foreground. So the next layer to paint up are the leaves because they're behind the chipmunk and behind the yellow petals in the middle of the sunflower. So in goes the leaves. So I'm painting the leaves, and I kind of paint the leaves and the chipmunk up at the same time. They're kind of on the same middle ground plane. So I'm going to work these back and forth. As one shape and one layer dries, I can work on another one. Again, each one of these shapes I treat individually, working from lightest to darkest. And I go through a variety of techniques to build up the textures that I want in every shape. Sometimes I'm dry brushing, sometimes I'm using the wet on wet technique. What's important, no matter what technique you use, is to read the wetness of the paper. And when you get good at reading the wetness of the paper, you know exactly how much water or color to add to the paper at what exact moment in order to get the effect that you're looking for in your painting. Right now, I'm using less water and more color in order to build up the texture of fur in my chipmunk. So this is called dry brushing. I'm pretty much using my paintbrush as a pencil, and I'm going in there and individually painting in the texture that I want to see for fur. And I'm being very careful not to overwork any of the areas in the chipmunk because I really want him to look like the sun is just beaming off him on a bright sunny day. So I need to be careful not to overwork the colors in the fur. I want the fur to look light. And I want the sunflower to be the center of attention in my composition. You would think I'd want this chipmunk to be the center of attention, but really it's the center of the sunflower I'm very excited to paint. And because it's the closest thing to us in the foreground, I've saved it for last to paint in. First, before I can paint anything in the sunflower, I have to remove some of the masking fluid that I painted on to protect the yellow petals from getting green on them. Now I can go in and start building up the first layer of yellow in those petals. And boy, are those petals bright in my reference photo. It's really important to look up at your reference photo more often than you realize. It's a great habit to get into if you want to paint realistically from a reference source. And that reference source could be a photo or it could be from real life. So the more often you look up at that reference source, the more likely you're going to give your brain the right information for what the lines and shapes are that you're making, for the colors, the values, the textures. The more you look, the more you're going to see these things in your reference. And if I can give you one actionable tip that you can use in your own art, is to look 3 times, draw or paint once. You need to look more often than you paint. Now that I have my base layer of yellow on my sunflower done, I can go in and mask out the texture of the seeds in the middle of the sunflower. I use a layering technique with my masking fluid to build up all the darker shadows and values and textures in the sunflower. It's kind of like painting in reverse, where I'm masking out the positive shapes so that I can paint in the negative shapes. This is something that I do quite often in my watercolors, and I teach it in the academy. It's a ton of fun to learn how to do, but it is a little tricky in the beginning. It's a little nerve-wracking because you have to really trust yourself in that you're following the elements of art in your reference photo. Again, all these things are things we talk about in the academy so that you know how to pick out the right values, the right textures, what to mask out, and how many layers you need to build up in your paint strategy to create the vibrancy and contrast you're looking to achieve in your watercolor. Now, if you'd like to give my painting methods a try, I have a free course on how to paint a chickadee that you can sign up for. I'll have the link below this video, along with another link that you can sign up to join my academy so that you can get access to all my paint videos, including this fun one with a chipmunk on a sunflower. Hope to see you in the academy.